The fluorescent lights hummed overhead in the empty office building as Maria Santos pushed her cleaning cart down the marble hallway. At 52, she had been working as a night custodian for Pinnacle Corporate Center for 8 years. Her weathered hands gripped the handle of her mop as she methodically cleaned each section of the floor, taking pride in her work despite the exhaustion that seemed to settle deeper into her bones with each passing month. Maria had arrived in Chicago from Guatemala 23 years ago with nothing but hope and determination. She spoke little English then, but she understood the language of hard work. Over the years, she had built a quiet life for herself and her daughter, Isabella. The custodial job at Pinnacle wasn't glamorous, but it provided steady income and health insurance, two things Maria never took for granted. Tonight felt different, though. There was a tension in her shoulders that had nothing to do with the physical demands of her job. Earlier that day, she had received a call that would change everything. Her daughter Isabella, now 25 and working as a teacher in Houston, had been diagnosed with a rare autoimmune condition. The medical bills were already piling up, and Isabella needed specialized treatment that insurance would only partially cover. Maria paused her mopping to check her phone. No new messages from Isabella, but 3 missed calls from the hospital billing department. She took a deep breath and continued working, trying to push away the growing worry that threatened to overwhelm her. She had faced challenges before. She would face this one too. As she moved to clean the executive offices on the 42nd floor, Maria noticed that one of the corner offices still had lights on. This was unusual. Most executives left by 6 in the evening, and it was now past 10. She approached carefully, not wanting to disturb anyone who might still be working. Through the glass partition, she could see a man in an expensive suit sitting at his desk, papers scattered around him, looking utterly exhausted. Maria had seen him before during her 8 years of working in the building. He was one of the executives from the investment firm on the 42nd floor, though she didn't know his name or exact position. What she did know was that he always acknowledged her with a polite nod when their paths crossed, which was more than many other executives did. Most looked right through her as if she were invisible. She began cleaning the outer area of his office suite, being extra quiet so as not to disturb his work. As she dusted the reception desk, she couldn't help but notice the family photos scattered around his office. A beautiful woman with kind eyes, and 2 young children who looked to be around 8 and 10 years old. There was something about the way he looked at those photos that reminded Maria of how she felt about Isabella. The building manager, Mr. Thompson, had been particularly difficult lately. A thin man in his 50s with a permanent scowl, he seemed to take pleasure in finding fault with the custodial staff's work. Maria had managed to stay under his radar for most of her tenure, but recently he had been making comments about redundancies and cost-cutting measures. The writing was on the wall, but Maria had hoped her years of dedicated service would count for something. As she continued cleaning, Maria's phone buzzed. It was Isabella calling from Houston. She stepped into the women's restroom to take the call, not wanting to disturb the executive who was still working late. "Mama, how are you doing?" Isabella's voice sounded tired, which immediately made Maria's heart clench with worry. "I'm fine, Mija. How are you feeling? Did you see the specialist today?" "Yes, I saw Dr. Rodriguez." "Mama, the treatment plan is more expensive than we thought. Even with insurance, we're looking at about $30,000 over the next 6 months. Maria felt her world tilt. $30,000 might as well have been $30 million. She made barely enough to cover her basic living expenses and send a little money to Isabella each month. She had about $3,000 in savings, money she had been putting aside for emergencies, but this was beyond anything she had prepared for. "Don't worry about the money, Isabella. We'll figure something out. Your health is the most important thing." "Mama, I can't ask you to do this. Maybe I can find a different treatment, something less expensive." "Absolutely not," Maria said firmly. "We will find a way. I'll pick up extra shifts, maybe find a second job. You focus on getting better." After hanging up, Maria sat in the restroom for a few minutes, allowing herself a moment to feel the full weight of the situation. Tears welled up in her eyes, but she wiped them away quickly. She had cried enough over the years. What she needed now was action, not tears. She returned to her cleaning duties, her mind racing with possibilities. Maybe she could ask Mr. Thompson for overtime hours. Maybe she could find weekend work at another building. Maybe she could sell some of her few possessions. The ideas felt inadequate against the enormity of the medical bills, but she had to try something. As she approached the executive offices again, she noticed that Mr. Thompson was walking down the hallway toward her. His presence at this hour was unusual and immediately put Maria on edge. He rarely worked past 5 in the evening, preferring to delegate the supervision of night staff to his assistant managers. "Santos," he called out, his voice echoing in the quiet hallway. "I need to speak with you." Maria's stomach dropped. She had been expecting this conversation for weeks, but that didn't make it any easier to face. She set down her cleaning supplies and walked toward him, trying to maintain her composure. "Yes, Mr. Thompson? Due to budget constraints, we're going to have to make some adjustments to our custodial staff. Tonight is your last night. You can finish your shift, but don't bother coming in tomorrow." The words hit Maria like a physical blow. She had known this might happen, but hearing it made it real in a way that preparation couldn't soften. After 8 years of dedicated service, she was being dismissed with no notice, no severance, and no consideration for her situation. "Mr. Thompson, please. I've been here for 8 years. I've never missed a day unless I was really sick. Is there anything I can do? Any other positions available?" "The decision has been made. We're outsourcing the night cleaning to a company that can do it cheaper. It's nothing personal, just business." Nothing personal. Maria had heard those words before, usually from people for whom the consequences of their decisions were abstract numbers on a spreadsheet rather than real lives being affected. To Mr. Thompson, she was just an expense that could be eliminated. To Maria, this job was her lifeline, especially now with Isabella's medical bills looming. "Can I at least have a few days to find something else?" "I have." She started to explain about Isabella's situation, but Mr. Thompson cut her off. "Like I said, tonight is your last night. You'll receive your final paycheck with any accrued vacation time by Friday." He paused, then added with what might have been intended as kindness but came across as condescension, "You're a good worker, Santos. You'll find something else." With that, he turned and walked away, leaving Maria standing alone in the hallway. The fluorescent lights continued their incessant humming, and the building felt more empty and cold than it ever had before. Maria stood there for several minutes, trying to process what had just happened. She had lost her job, her health insurance, and her steady income at the worst possible time in her life. Isabella needed expensive medical treatment, and now Maria had no way to help her daughter when she needed it most. She thought about calling Isabella back to tell her what had happened, but she couldn't bring herself to add this burden to her daughter's already overwhelming situation. Isabella was dealing with a serious health condition. She didn't need to worry about her mother's employment situation on top of everything else. Instead, Maria picked up her cleaning supplies and continued working. She had been raised to finish what she started, and she would complete her final shift with the same dedication she had shown for the past 8 years. Even if no one else valued her work, she valued it. Her integrity wasn't for sale, and it certainly wasn't subject to Mr. Thompson's budget constraints. As she cleaned, Maria's mind wandered to her early days in Chicago. She remembered the fear and uncertainty of being in a new country, not speaking the language well, not knowing anyone. She had faced impossible odds before and survived. She had built a life from nothing once, perhaps she could do it again. But, at 52, the prospect felt more daunting than it had at 29. The job market was different now, and age discrimination, while illegal, was a reality she would have to face. Most employers preferred younger workers, especially for physical jobs like custodial work. And, with Isabella's medical needs, Maria didn't have the luxury of time to find the perfect position. She needed income immediately. She finished cleaning the common areas and moved back toward the executive offices. The man in the expensive suit was still there, now standing by his window looking out at the Chicago skyline. The city lights twinkled below, each one representing someone's life, someone's dreams, someone's struggles. Maria wondered what his story was. What kept him at the office so late? Did he have problems that kept him awake at night, or was this just the normal rhythm of his high-powered life? From her position in the shadows of the working world, the lives of executives seemed impossibly glamorous and worry-free. She imagined they went home to beautiful houses and never worried about money the way she did. As she cleaned around his office suite, being careful not to disturb his late-night work session, Maria allowed herself a moment of self-pity. It wasn't fair that Isabella was sick. It wasn't fair that Maria had lost her job just when she needed it most. It wasn't fair that 8 years of loyal service meant nothing when budget cuts were needed. But fairness, Maria had learned long ago, was not a guarantee in life. What mattered was how you responded to unfairness, how you picked yourself up when life knocked you down, how you kept moving forward even when the path ahead was unclear. She would find another job. She would find a way to help Isabella. She would survive this crisis just as she had survived others. The alternative was unthinkable, so she simply wouldn't think it. As Maria finished her final shift at Pinnacle Corporate Center, she took one last look around the building that had been her second home for 8 years. Tomorrow, someone else would clean these floors, dust these desks, empty these wastebaskets. Life would go on without her, just as it always did when people left their positions. She gathered her personal items from the small locker in the custodial supply room. A spare pair of shoes, a sweater for cold nights, a thermos that Isabella had given her last Christmas. Such small things, but they represented the accumulation of years of working in this place. Before leaving, Maria stopped by the security desk to turn in her access card and keys. The night security guard, Carlos, had become a friend over the years. They often shared brief conversations during her breaks, two immigrants finding common ground in their shared experiences. "Heard you're not coming back," Carlos said quietly. "I'm sorry, Maria. This place won't be the same without you." "Thank you, Carlos. You've been a good friend. If you need a reference, you know I'll vouch for you. You're the most reliable person in this whole building." Maria smiled for the first time that night. "I appreciate that more than you know." As she walked toward the exit, Maria passed the executive offices one more time. The man in the expensive suit was finally packing up his things, getting ready to leave for the night. Their eyes met briefly through the glass, and he nodded politely as he always did. She nodded back, wondering if he had any idea that he had just witnessed the end of her 8-year career at Pinnacle Corporate Center. The night air was cool as Maria stepped outside. Chicago never truly slept, and, even at this late hour, there were still cars on the streets, people heading home from late shifts or night classes or social events. Everyone had somewhere to go, something to do, a purpose that kept them moving through the city. Maria walked to the bus stop, knowing that tomorrow she would not be making this same journey. Tomorrow she would begin the difficult process of finding a new job while trying to figure out how to help Isabella with her medical expenses. The challenges seemed overwhelming, but Maria had faced overwhelming challenges before. As she waited for the night bus, Maria's phone buzzed with a text from Isabella. "Good night, Mama. I love you. Don't worry about me too much." Maria smiled through her tears as she typed back, "I love you too, Mija. Everything will be fine." She didn't know how everything would be fine, but she knew it had to be. Isabella was depending on her, and Maria Santos had never let her daughter down before. She wasn't about to start now, even if she had no idea how she would keep that promise. 3 days had passed since Maria's dismissal from Pinnacle Corporate Center, and the reality of her situation was beginning to settle in like a heavy weight on her chest. She had spent those days walking from business to business, filling out applications and asking about job openings. The responses were polite but discouraging. Most places wanted online applications. Many required experience with specific cleaning products or equipment she hadn't used. Some were only hiring part-time positions that wouldn't provide health insurance. Maria's small apartment in Pilsen felt smaller than usual as she sat at her kitchen table with a stack of bills spread out before her. The rent was due in 2 weeks. Her car payment was already overdue by 3 days. And Isabella's medical bills kept arriving in the mail, each one a reminder of the mounting debt that seemed impossible to overcome. Her savings account, which had taken her 5 years to build up to $3,000, was now down to $2,200 after she had sent Isabella money for her first round of treatments. At this rate, she would be completely broke within a month, even if she managed to find a new job immediately. The phone rang, interrupting her calculation of how long she could survive on her remaining savings. It was Isabella calling, which both warmed Maria's heart and filled her with anxiety. She wanted to hear her daughter's voice, but she dreaded having to pretend that everything was fine when her world was falling apart. "Hi, Mija. How are you feeling today?" "Much better, actually. The new medication seems to be helping with the joint pain. Dr. Rodriguez says if I respond well to this treatment, I might be able to return to teaching sooner than expected." Maria felt a surge of relief. At least Isabella was improving. That was the most important thing, more important than money or jobs or any of the other problems Maria was facing. "That's wonderful news. I'm so proud of how brave you've been through all of this. Mama, I need to ask you something, and I want you to be honest with me. Are you doing okay? You sound different lately, stressed." Maria hesitated. She had been trying so hard to protect Isabella from her own problems, but her daughter knew her too well. Isabella had inherited Maria's emotional intelligence along with her stubborn determination. "I'm fine, Mija. Just tired from working extra shifts." It wasn't exactly a lie. Maria was tired, though not from working extra shifts since she no longer had a job to work extra shifts at. "Mama, the billing department called me today. They said you sent a payment that was larger than we discussed. Where did that money come from?" Maria closed her eyes. She should have known Isabella would find out. Her daughter was too smart and too responsible not to keep track of her own medical expenses. "Don't worry about that. I had some savings put aside." "How much savings could you possibly have on a custodian's salary?" "Mama, please tell me you didn't do something drastic." Before Maria could answer, her phone beeped with another call coming in. She glanced at the screen and saw it was from a number she didn't recognize with a 312 area code, which meant it was local to Chicago. "Isabella, I have another call coming in. It might be about a job. Can I call you back later? Promise me we'll talk about this money situation later." "I mean it, Mama. I promise. I love you." Maria switched to the incoming call, hoping it might be good news for once. "Hello? Is this Maria Santos?" "Yes, this is Maria. My name is David Hartman. I'm an executive with Hartman Capital Management. We have offices in the Pinnacle Corporate Center building. I believe you used to work as a custodian there?" Maria's heart started beating faster. Had she left something behind? Was there a problem with her final paycheck? "Yes, I worked there for 8 years until this week. Miss Santos, I'm calling because I witnessed something the other night that has been on my mind, and I was hoping we could meet to discuss it. Would you be available to come to my office tomorrow morning?" Maria was confused. What could an executive possibly want to discuss with her? And how did he even get her phone number? "I'm sorry, Mr. Hartman, but I'm not sure what you're referring to. Did I do something wrong?" "No, absolutely not. Quite the opposite, actually. Listen, I know this must seem strange, but would you be willing to come in around 10 tomorrow morning? I promise it will be worth your time." Maria hesitated. She had planned to spend the next day job hunting, but something in David Hartman's voice made her curious. He sounded genuine, not like he was trying to get her in trouble or take advantage of her somehow. "I suppose I could come by. Should I ask for you at the reception desk?" "Yes, just tell them you have an appointment with David Hartman on the 42nd floor. And, Ms. Santos? Thank you for taking my call." After hanging up, Maria sat staring at her phone, trying to figure out what David Hartman could possibly want to discuss with her. She vaguely remembered the name from the building directory, but she couldn't place exactly who he was among all the executives she had seen over the years. The next morning, Maria dressed in her best outfit, a navy blue dress she had worn to Isabella's college graduation 5 years earlier. It was slightly worn and not as fashionable as it had once been, but it was professional and clean. She took the bus downtown, watching the familiar streets pass by the window and wondering what awaited her at Pinnacle Corporate Center. The building lobby looked the same as always, all marble and steel and glass that made everyone's footsteps echo importantly. Maria approached the reception desk, feeling self-conscious in her simple dress among all the business suits and expensive accessories of the morning rush. "I have an appointment with David Hartman on the 42nd floor," she told the receptionist. The young woman checked her computer and smiled. "Yes, Mr. Hartman is expecting you. Take elevator bank B to the 42nd floor. His assistant will meet you there." As Maria rode the elevator up to the 42nd floor, she tried to calm her nerves. The higher floors of the building had always seemed like another world when she worked here, places where important decisions were made and millions of dollars changed hands. She had cleaned these offices for years but had never actually been invited to meet with anyone who worked in them. The elevator doors opened to reveal an elegantly appointed reception area with leather furniture and original artwork on the walls. A woman in her 30s with perfectly styled hair and an expensive-looking suit approached her. "Ms. Santos? I'm Jennifer, Mr. Hartman's assistant. He's ready to see you now." Maria followed Jennifer through a maze of glass-walled offices and conference rooms. Through the windows, she could see people in business attire having intense conversations, pointing at charts and graphs, talking on phones with serious expressions. This was the world she had cleaned around for 8 years but had never truly been part of. Jennifer knocked on a door at the corner of the floor and opened it without waiting for a response. "Mr. Hartman? Ms. Santos is here. Please, send her in." Maria stepped into the office and immediately recognized David Hartman as the executive who had been working late the night she was fired. He was younger than she had expected, probably in his early 40s, with kind eyes and a warm smile. He stood up from behind his desk as she entered, which surprised her. In her experience, important people didn't stand up for custodians. "Ms. Santos, thank you so much for coming. Please, have a seat." Maria sat in one of the leather chairs facing his desk, still confused about why she was there. David sat back down and leaned forward slightly, his expression serious but not unfriendly. "First, I want to apologize for the unusual nature of this meeting. I'm sure you're wondering why I asked you here. I am curious, Mr. Hartman. The other night, when you were working your final shift, I was in my office quite late dealing with some complicated business matters. I couldn't help but overhear a phone conversation you had." Maria felt her cheeks burn with embarrassment. She had thought she was being quiet when she spoke with Isabella in the restroom area, but sound carried differently in empty buildings. "I apologize if I disturbed your work. I tried to be as quiet as possible." "You didn't disturb me at all. But what I heard made me realize something important about the kind of person you are, and it's been weighing on my mind ever since." David paused, seeming to choose his words carefully. "I heard you talking to what I assume was your daughter about her medical situation and the financial challenges you're facing. I heard you promise to find a way to help her, even though you had just lost your job. The love and determination in your voice reminded me of my own mother when I was growing up." Maria felt tears welling up in her eyes. She hadn't realized anyone had witnessed her moment of vulnerability, and she wasn't sure how to feel about this stranger knowing her private struggles. "Mr. Hartman, I appreciate your concern, but I'm not sure why you're telling me this. Because I also heard the conversation you had with your building manager. I heard him dismiss you after 8 years of service with no consideration for your circumstances or your dedication. And I watched you continue working with the same professionalism and care you always showed, even after being treated so poorly." David stood up and walked over to the window, looking out at the city below. "Ms. Santos, I've been in business for 15 years. I've seen a lot of people in a lot of different situations. Most people, when they're facing the kind of crisis you're dealing with, would become bitter or angry or desperate. They might cut corners, or complain, or give up entirely. But you didn't do any of those things. You finished your work with dignity and grace, even knowing it was your last night. Maria didn't know how to respond. She had never thought of her actions as particularly remarkable. She had simply done what needed to be done. The reason I asked you here, David continued, turning back to face her, is because I believe character is the most important quality in any employee, and you demonstrated more character in that one difficult evening than most people show in years of good times. He walked back to his desk and picked up a folder. I've been looking for someone to head up our corporate services department. It's a position that involves managing all of our office operations, coordinating with vendors, overseeing facility maintenance, and ensuring that our work environment supports our team's productivity. Maria's heart started beating faster. Was he offering her a job? The position comes with a significant increase in responsibility compared to custodial work, but also a significant increase in compensation. The starting salary is $65,000 per year, with full health insurance, dental and vision coverage, 3 weeks paid vacation, and performance bonuses. Maria felt like she might faint. $65,000 was more than twice what she had been making as a custodian. With that salary and full health insurance, she could help Isabella with her medical bills and still have money left over for savings. Mr. Hartman, I don't understand. I don't have any management experience. I don't have a college degree. I'm not qualified for that kind of position. You're wrong about that. You're extremely qualified, just not in the traditional way. You understand how buildings operate better than most people with master's degrees in business administration. You know what it takes to maintain a professional environment. And, most importantly, you have integrity, work ethic, and genuine care for quality. David sat back down and opened the folder on his desk. I've taken the liberty of having our HR department prepare a job offer for you. Obviously, you don't have to accept it, and you should feel free to take time to think about it. But I wanted to make sure you knew that someone had noticed your character and values it appropriately. Maria stared at the papers he was holding, unable to process what was happening. 3 days ago, she had been facing unemployment and financial ruin. Now, a man she barely knew was offering her an opportunity that seemed too good to be true. Why would you do this for someone you don't even know? David smiled, and, for a moment he looked younger, more like someone's son than a powerful executive. Because 15 years ago, my mother was in a situation very similar to yours. She was a single parent working 2 jobs to support me and my sister. One night, she was working late at an office building, cleaning up after a company Christmas party. She accidentally overheard a conversation about layoffs that were planned for after the holidays. He paused, his expression becoming more serious. My mother could have used that information to look for another job before the layoffs were announced. She could have saved herself weeks of unemployment and financial stress. But she didn't. She felt it would be wrong to use information she had overheard, even if it would have helped her. David leaned back in his chair, looking out the window again. 2 weeks later, she was laid off along with half the custodial staff. We lost our apartment because she couldn't find work quickly enough to pay the rent. We spent 3 months living in our car while she looked for steady employment. Maria felt her throat tighten with emotion. She knew the fear and desperation that came with financial insecurity, especially when children were involved. Eventually, someone gave my mother a chance. A business owner who saw her character and was willing to look beyond her lack of formal credentials offered her a position with real responsibility and decent pay. That opportunity changed our lives completely. David turned back to Maria. My mother always taught me that when you're in a position to help someone who deserves it, you should do it without expecting anything in return. She said that kindness and opportunity should be passed forward, not hoarded by those who are lucky enough to have them. Maria wiped away tears she didn't realize had started falling. Mr. Hartman, this is incredibly generous, but I need you to understand that I've never managed anyone before. I've never worked in an office environment as anything other than support staff. I don't want to accept this position and, then, disappoint you. Ms. Santos, let me ask you something. In your 8 years of custodial work, did you ever leave a job unfinished? No, never. Did you ever miss work unless you were genuinely too sick to come in? I missed 4 days in 8 years, and only when I had the flu. Did you ever cut corners or do substandard work because no one was watching? No. If something needed to be done properly, I did it properly. Then, you have all the qualifications that matter most. Everything else can be learned. David slid the folder across the desk to her. Take this home. Read through everything. Talk to your daughter about it. If you decide you're interested, we can start with a 90-day trial period. If after 3 months you feel like this isn't the right fit, or if I determine that the position isn't working out, we can part ways with no hard feelings. Maria picked up the folder with trembling hands. The weight of it felt symbolic, as if she were holding the possibility of a completely different future. There's one more thing, David said. I understand that your daughter is facing significant medical expenses. Our health insurance plan includes coverage for family members, and the premiums are very reasonable. If you accept this position, you could add Isabella to your coverage. Maria felt like she might collapse from relief. Health insurance for Isabella would solve one of her biggest worries and significantly reduce the overall cost of her daughter's treatment. I don't know how to thank you, Mr. Hartman. You don't need to thank me. Just consider the offer seriously. And, if you decide to accept it, bring the same integrity and dedication to this role that you brought to custodial work. As Maria prepared to leave, David stood up again and walked around his desk. Ms. Santos, can I ask you something personal? Of course. When you were on the phone with your daughter the other night, you promised her that everything would be fine, even though you had just lost your job and were facing enormous challenges. How did you know you could keep that promise? Maria thought for a moment, remembering the desperation and determination she had felt that night. I didn't know how I would keep it. But I knew I had to. When you love someone, you find a way to keep your promises, even when it seems impossible. David nodded, his expression thoughtful. That's exactly the kind of thinking we need more of in business. People who understand that promises matter, that taking care of others is a responsibility, not just an option. As Maria left the Pinnacle Corporate Center building, she felt like she was walking in a dream. The folder in her hands contained job descriptions, salary information, benefits packages, and other documents that represented a future she had never dared to imagine for herself. She walked to a nearby coffee shop and sat down to call Isabella, her hands still shaking slightly from the emotional intensity of the morning. Mama? How did the meeting go? You said someone wanted to discuss something with you. Isabella, I need to tell you something. And you're going to have trouble believing it. What happened? You sound strange. Maria took a deep breath and began to tell her daughter about David Hartman, about the job offer, about the salary and benefits that would change both of their lives. As she spoke, she could hear Isabella's astonishment and joy through the phone. Mama, this is incredible. This man offered you this position just because he overheard you talking to me? It's more than that. He saw something in how I handled a difficult situation. He believes that character matters more than credentials. And the health insurance would cover my treatment? Yes, Mija. If I accept this position, we can add you to my plan. Your medical bills would be much more manageable. Isabella was quiet for a moment, and Maria could hear her daughter crying softly. Mama, do you remember what you always used to tell me when I was little and things seemed hopeless? Maria smiled, remembering the countless times she had comforted her daughter with the same words. I used to tell you that sometimes, when things look darkest, the universe is just preparing to surprise us with something beautiful. I never really believed that until now. This is our beautiful surprise, isn't it? Yes, Mija. This is our beautiful surprise. 2 weeks later, Maria stood outside the Pinnacle Corporate Center building at 7:30 in the morning, wearing a new navy blue business suit that Isabella had insisted on helping her buy online. The crisp Chicago morning air filled her lungs as she looked up at the towering glass structure that had once represented just a workplace and now symbolized an entirely new chapter in her life. The past 14 days had been a whirlwind of preparation and disbelief. After spending 3 days carefully reviewing every document in David Hartman's job offer, talking it over with Isabella, and even calling the Human Resources Department to confirm that this wasn't some elaborate mistake, Maria had accepted the position as head of corporate services at Hartman Capital Management. The salary alone would have been life-changing, but the benefits package was beyond anything she had ever imagined. Full health insurance with family coverage meant that Isabella's medical treatment would now cost only a fraction of what they had originally feared. The dental and vision coverage would take care of checkups that Maria had been postponing for years due to cost. 3 weeks of paid vacation seemed impossibly generous after 8 years of jobs where any time off meant lost wages. But, perhaps most importantly, Maria would have an office. A real office with her name on the door, where she would be responsible for managing vendor relationships, overseeing facility operations, and ensuring that the work environment supported the productivity of some of Chicago's most successful investment professionals. The thought still made her nervous, but David Hartman had been patient and encouraging during their follow-up. Sometimes the most powerful conversations happen when we think nobody is listening. Sometimes the greatest acts of kindness come from the most unexpected places. And, sometimes, a single overheard phone call can reveal the true character of a person and change multiple lives forever. This is the story of Maria Santos, a night custodian who thought her world was ending when she lost her job during the worst possible moment of her life. Little did she know that her private moment of vulnerability would be witnessed by someone with the power to not only restore her faith in humanity but transform her entire future. What happens next will remind you that guardian angels sometimes wear $1,000 suits, and that the universe has a way of putting the right people in the right place at exactly the right time. This is a story about dignity, unexpected kindness, and how one man's decision to truly listen would create ripples of change that neither he nor Maria could have ever imagined.